Meeting of the Calvert County Board of Commissioners. At this time, I would like to ask I have your name right here. Pastor Nevin, if you give us an invocation, please, from the First Baptist Church of Calvert County, which is just south of Prince Frederick, correct?
Yes, sir.
All
Yes, sir.
right. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Let's pray together. Lord, as we come to your presence this morning, I am reminded of what you have said in your word when you commanded us to be still and to know that you are God. Lord, as we live such busy lives in our society, in our culture, sometimes we fail at that. But Lord, as we have paused this morning to come to your presence to pray, help us to remember that you're God, that you're the creator of the heavens and the earth, and that you are the sovereign God of the universe. And Lord, there is nothing that happens that you're not aware of, and that you are in total control. Lord, in that we can find rest and comfort, because there is so much turmoil in our country and throughout the world as we see the chaos, the inflation, and everything that else is happening. But help us to rest in the fact, Lord, to know that you are in total control. I pray especially for Ukrainians, Lord, to think that these people's country is being devastated. People are leaving, and they're losing their homes, everything that they have. And here in America, we still have some security, and for that we thank you. But I do pray for those folks that have lost everything. I pray that you'll give them a hope and a future, and help them to look to you, that you're the author and finisher of our faith. And I pray, Father, that you'll direct them in these times. Lord, I want to thank you for the privilege of coming before these folks today and praying for them. I thank you, Lord, that they recognize that they need wisdom from on high. We know, Lord, that when leaders get to the point where they think that they do not need God, we know, Lord, that they're going to take us down the wrong path. And so I pray for these men, these women, as they have to lead our county. I pray, Father, for wisdom for them. And I know that they have a hard job. And I pray, Lord, that they will always seek your face before they vote. And I pray, Lord, that they would make decisions that would not be in their own personal interest, but would be in the interest of the residents of our county. So to that end, Lord, we pray for them today. I pray for that you'll give each one of us a blessed day as we seek to serve you. We pray in your precious name. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, thank you, Pastor Nevin. Anybody that's watched our meetings know that we need all the help we can get. So any clergy out there that's listening, if you want to volunteer to come in and provide an invocation, we'd certainly love to have you. So just want to put that offer out there. The next item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. Are there any corrections or additions to the agenda as presented?
Move to approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as submitted. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So next on the agenda is public service announcements. So today, just want to let everyone know that the board has decided that we're going to appoint a citizen review committee to review the applications for the Police Accountability Board. To date, we've received 38 applications, and that closes on March 25th. So if you have an interest, please submit an application. But we felt it best to have some citizen input and try to evaluate all those applications to help us as we work through that process. So the review committee will consist of one representative from the FOP, one representative from the NAACP, and one representative from each of the central committees. So we'll be sending that notice out asking for recommendations or representatives, and as soon as that closing date arrives and Human Resources is ready, we'll call that committee together to go those through those applications and evaluate them and provide some recommendations to the board. Today is also the Voting Rights Act of 1965. On this day, President Lyndon Johnson called upon Congress to create the Voting Rights Act to outlaw discriminatory practices meant to deny black voters the opportunity to participate in elections. So I just want to make notice of that day. And while we won't be meeting on Thursday, is March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. And we want to just make sure that everybody who celebrates that day has an enjoyable and safe celebration, and that we advise that you do not drink and drive. You drink responsibly or have a designated driver if you're traveling our roads and highways. But we want to make sure that everybody's safe out there, and I'm wearing green today, and we've had some staff wearing green. So just trying to celebrate the holiday a little bit early. So that's all I have. Next item on the agenda is appointments. Deputy Administrator Vasallo.
Good morning, Commissioners. You have 2 rounds of appointments this morning. The first one is for the Cove Point Light Station Commission. Staff is requesting that the board reappoint Brenda Hallweger to the Cove Point Light Station Commission. No vacancies following this appointment.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to reappoint Brenda Hallweger to the Cove Point Light Station Commission. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, your second round of appointments is for the Building Board of Calvert County. Staff is requesting that the board pass a motion to appoint Edmund Shamleffer to the Building Board of Calvert County, and this is as recommended by the building. Following that appointment, there will be no vacancies.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to appoint Edmund Shumleffer to the Building Board of Calvert County, as recommended by the Building Board. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is consent. Department of Parks and, item 1 is Department of Parks and Recreation, BG&E Field Well Replacement Budget Adjustment. Item 2, Department of Finance and Budget, Pretrial Services Grant Award and Budget Adjustment 185. Item 3, Department of Finance and Budget, Calvert County Sheriff's Child Support Grant Budget Modification. Item 4, Department of Finance and Budget Award Recommendation ITB 2022-038, Right-of-Way and Sediment Pond Area Mowing. Item 5, Department of Community Resources FY 2023 Transportation Grant Application. Are there any corrections to the consent agenda? Those items will be adopted as presented. Next item on the agenda is old business. Department of Parks and Rec, Local Parks and Playgrounds Infrastructure Funding Program. Director Nizal.
Good morning, Commissioners. Shannon
Good morning.
Nizal, Director of Parks and Recreation. I'll go ahead and read the memo. In the 2021 legislative session, the Maryland General Assembly passed legislation, House Bill 590, that includes an allocation of $1 million in grant funds to Calvert County for shovel-ready park infrastructure projects managed by the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, or DNR. The Department of Parks and Recreation currently has a capital improvement plan, CIP, project to relocate and expand the tennis court complex at Dunkirk District Park. The Board of County Commissioners has previously approved funding for this project. On October 19th, 2021, the BOCC approved the submittal of the grant application for this project. On February 16th, 2022, the Maryland Board of Public Works approved the grant application for the Dunkirk District Park Tennis Courts project in the amount of $700,000 with no required match. Discussion. A budget adjustment of this amount should be accounted for in the FY 2022 budget. The budget adjustment required a public hearing because it is in excess of $150,000. A public hearing was held on March 1st, 2022, and the record was closed. Fiscal impact. If approved, it amends the adopted budget for FY 2022 to appropriate and allocate $700,000 for construction of the Dunkirk District Park tennis courts to account 431601-45006, reimbursable by the Maryland Department of Natural Resources. And conclusion recommendation, staff recommends that the BOCC approve BA number 013 CIP and sign the related budget resolution. Any questions?
I don't hear any. Motions?
I'd like to make a motion that the board adopt the motion approving and enacting budget adjustment 013 for the CIP.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that we approve and adopt budget adjustment 013. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Commissioners.
Director
Thanks, Shannon.
Next, next item on the agenda is new business. Item 1, Department of Public Works Budget Adjustment Request. Deputy Director Jones.
Yes, sir. Board of Commissioners,
Morning.
staff, and citizens at home watching.
Is JR coming up, or is he just here for background support?
He's here for other background,
Okay.
in case I need support, right?
Backup singers.
Got a lot of background.
My name's Tom Jones, Deputy Director for DPW for General Services. I am here today to read a memo about budget adjustment request BA 037. The background, the Calvert County Department of Public Works, DPW, General Services is requesting the transfer of funds from the Hunting Creek Annex project to the work release facility. The Hunting Creek Annex project was adopted in the FY 2022 Capital Improvement Plan, CIP, to create office space to the Sheriff's Department. Leadership from both departments identified the work release facility would meet requirements and require less funding. Discussion. DPW is requesting the transfer of $100,000 from the Hunting Creek Annex CIP to the work release CIP. The transfer of some of the original cost for the renovation of the Hunting Creek Annex for the Sheriff's Department will enable DPW to greatly reduce the scope and cost of the relocation. The original budget for the Hunting Creek Annex renovation was $150,000 adopted in the FY 2022. The projected costs of $950,000 for FY 2023 and $100,000 for FY 2024. The FY 22 Fiscal Impact. The FY 22 Hunting Creek Annex renovation will decrease from $150,000 to $100,000, and the work release facility will increase to $100,000. The change in location will save the county approximately $1.1 million. Conclusion is the staff recommends the Board of County Commissioners approve the budget adjustment 037 CIP for $100,000. Now, I also have Colonel Dave McDowell here, if you have any questions.
So the 950 and the 100's coming out of the CIP.
Yes, sir.
And technically, the only thing that's been approved to date is the 150.
150, yes, sir.
Right.
That's for Hunting Creek Annex.
Correct.
That's why I'm asking to be shifted over to.
Thank you for saving $1.1 million.
Well, that's also Colonel McDowell's efforts as well. Thank you.
And just for the record, there is no profit sharing that the county has for people that save that much money. You guys don't get a cut of that, right?
None. No, sir.
But they'll come back and ask it to spend it someplace else.
Exactly.
Not today.
Not today. Any other questions? Actions? Motions?
Yes, Mr. President, I'll make a motion that the Board of County Commissioners approve budget adjustment number 037 for $100,000.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to enact budget adjustment 037 in the CIP. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. You have the next item too.
Got the
Got the
next
chair
item too? Yes,
warm.
sir.
Item 2.
Item 2 is a memo about the automated banking services agreement with the State Employee Credit Union, the ATM. The background, due to the demolition of the County Services Plaza, the county and the State Employee Credit Union of Maryland Incorporated, CQ, relocated the automated teller machine, ATM. The Department of Public Works General Services Division has collaborated with CQ to relocate and lease the space at the Courthouse Annex, 176 Main Street, Prince Frederick, Maryland, for the new ATM machine. Discussion. Both the county and CQ have entered into an agreement defining the terms and responsibilities of each. Upon execution, the term of the agreement shall be 5 years with the option to extend the initial term for 3 periods of 2 consecutive years. Fiscal Impact, annual rent received is $2,800 per year. Rental extension shall escalate by 3% each term. Conclusion, staff recommends the Board of County Commissioners authorize the Board President to sign the automatic banking service agreement.
Questions? Discussions? Actions?
Move to approve, Mr. President.
Second?
Have a motion and a second that we adopt and pass a motion authorizing the board president to sign the automated banking services agreement. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you,
Enjoy the rest
sir.
of your day.
Thank you.
Item 3 on the agenda is Department of Public Works Memorandum of Understanding with St. Mary's County for usage of Calvert County solid waste facilities. Mr. Ritter, good morning, sir.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. James Ritter, Deputy Director for Enterprise Funds, presenting the memo on the Memorandum of Understanding between Calvert County Government and St. Mary's County. This established an agreement for the transportation and disposal of residual, residential and municipal solid waste at Calvert County Solid Waste Disposal, Transfer, and Processing Facility in order to serve the solid waste disposal needs of St. Mary's County. The discussion is the document is a renewal of an MOU that was signed in effect on July 7th of 2017 and expired on February 20th of 2022. The fiscal impact of the MOU depends on the volume of municipal solid waste that St. Mary's County delivers to the Appeal Landfill Transfer Station. At present, St. Mary's County is charged $84.05 per ton. The current tipping fee of the out-of-county customers, thus generating revenue for the Solid Waste Division. The conclusion and recommendation is from the Solid Waste Division is that the Board of County Commissioners authorize the Board President to sign the MOU. Any questions?
Do they pay the same amount that, like we would pay if we went there? Is it the same price?
It would be the out-of-county rate.
Oh, it's out of county.
Yes, correct.
What's the difference in that, do you know?
I can't remember. The out-of-county rate's $84.05 per ton.
And what about in county? Do you have any idea?
I
It's no
believe it
big
is
deal.
about $74 right now.
About $10 difference?
Yes.
Gotcha.
So are we a little late signing the agreement?
Yes.
It appears that way.
It went to St. Mary's County first,
Oh, we're gonna blame them.
and then they sent it back to Calvert.
See that or COVID?
But everything's still operating even
Correct.
without an
Yes,
agreement.
sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions, discussions?
Mr. President, I make a
Motions.
motion to authorize the board president to sign the MOU.
Second.
I have a motion and a second authorizing the president to sign the memorandum of understanding with St. Mary's County as presented. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, James.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day. We may set a record today. We'll see. Next item on the agenda is a work session.
Might get to see the sun today.
No pressure.
Motion approved.
Right.
Good morning, Beth Richmond, Deputy Director, Finance and Budget.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mark Willis, County Administrator.
Good morning.
I will read the memo before we get into the presentation. So, we're talking about the FY 2023 staff recommended budget today. Background, the staff recommended budget, or SRB, for the general fund for FY 2023 begins July 1st, 2022, and totals $334.7 million. Currently, there are $2.4 million in new staffing and $10.1 million in new initiatives, including $5.4 million for the Board of Education, that staff have requested that are not included in the SRB. Discussion. The FY '23 budget continues to focus on providing funding for education, public safety, and capital investments while maintaining a high level of service to our community. This budget reflects an expenditure increase of $6.8 million over the prior year. This budget includes a longevity step, a step, and a cost of living or COLA of 4% for county employees. Fiscal impact. The county is in good shape financially for FY '23. Staff will work with the Board of County Commissioners on the outstanding request for possible inclusion in the Commissioner's budget. Conclusion recommendation. Staff seeks BOCC guidance on new staffing requests and new initiatives the board would like to include in the commissioner's budget. So, Mark and I will be presenting some data on the staff recommended budget, or SRB. Our discussion will include recommended revenues, recommended expenditures, and the 5-year forecast. We will also show you the list of new position requests and the list of new initiative requests that were submitted by the departments.
So Beth,
Yes, sir.
just, it bugged me when you read it.
Uh-oh.
So today, we're just getting the staff recommended budget to
Correct.
consider.
These
The
are
conclusion
highlights.
says that it's the initiatives that the board would like to include. Technically, the board hasn't even heard what you're going to present today. So
Commissioners,
it's-
that's a correct statement, so I'll answer that one. So as we work throughout the year, there are things that are discussed. For example, the fire rescue, the EMS services is probably a great example. It's been going on for several years, so it's kind of a projected program. So we have in initiatives that are already under review, and that's why we kind of use that term. We didn't want to say that anything was supported. We wanted to say that they were, a lot of this is initiatives that are already there, and they can go either way. And I will explain that when we get to the EMS portion of staffing. So it's, you're not telling us what to do ahead of time. And today is actually a kind of a preemption for what's going to happen next week. We wanted to give you an idea of what we were discussing, so as we go into next week, if you did have questions, individual commissioners could ask those questions of staff, so that when we present it, it's a little bit easier understood.
Right, because today is the first time
Uh,
most of us are going to hear
Correct.
these requests. So-
Absolutely.
So this is long-term. We'll have the public hearing next Tuesday, and then we'll meet with you again, and then, put together the commissioner's budget, which we again will hold in May. So, yes, preliminary.
And I'm sure that citizens that follow this directly year to year, they're going to understand that we had, fire rescue's been a topic for several years now, because the need to provide those services to the citizens when they're needed. And not that our volunteer folks aren't out there doing it, they actually requested our assistance in this manner. And it's a way that the Board of County Commissioners are stepping up to ensure that all citizens have that fire rescue, especially that rescue is what we're talking about, when the call comes in.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, the FY '22 adopted budget consisted of revenues totaling $327.9 million. The FY '23 staff recommended budget is coming in at $334.7 million. That's an increase of $6.8 million. How did we get there? First, utilizing data from the state of Maryland, we estimated revenue increases for property taxes and income taxes totaling $3.5 million. Next, we estimated a 20% increase in recordation taxes, and that's based on historical data. Lastly, other revenues and other financing sources are pretty flat, except for we do anticipate another insurance reimbursement, and so we've included $1.7 million in revenue for that insurance reimbursement. So on the previous slide, we showed you a $6.7 million increase in revenue. Because we have a balanced budget, we will discuss the same monetary impact on the expenditure side. Currently, the Board of Ed, or BOE, operating increase is $3.8 million. This was calculated using the MOU that expired in FY '21. Per the new state MOE, or Memo of Understanding, or excuse me, Maintenance of Effort, messed that one up. The county is only required to fund $132.8 million. That's a difference of $5.8 million. We will discuss this further on slide 13. As an aside, the BOE is asking for $9.1 million over the FY '22 adopted funding. You will see the excess between the staff recommended amount and the full amount requested by the BOE on slide 11. Next, we have Opeb. We've had quite a few years of positive returns, so the Opeb estimates, you can see, drop dramatically for the projection for FY '23. Salaries. The increase in salaries between the 2 years is associated with, I'm sorry.
Real quick, on
Yes,
the
sir.
OPEB question,
Yes.
on the OPEB line. I vaguely remember last fall when we met with the school board over at their building, that they had, I think, over 10 million in extra money, quote unquote, left over after they were done with their expenditures. And
I thought I heard something about only 5 million could be carried over, and so they had to take 5 million and put it into OPEB. Am I remembering something like that correctly?
Yes, when they have savings in a current year, anything over 5 million has to be contributed to OPEB.
And if I remember, last year that was
About,
over 5 million
yeah,
that
so I
they
think it was
had
10
in addition
million,
to the 5.
and so 5 million went to OPEB, and 5 million went to fund balance.
Well, but to be
So-
specific, and I'm sorry to jump in on your part, isn't that when their general fund balance gets over 5, then it has to go in there, but there are other pockets, like, OPEB or an insurance, or, gas, or anything, transportation. Those pockets can accrue money, and it's
Right.
not affected by that. It's only that one pocket, correct?
I'd have to
Because
ask
when
for
we
the
set
county
up that
attorney's
funding
assistance on
formula,
that one.
it was the discretionary funds, if I'm not wrong. Once anything over 5 million, John, do you remember this?
That was all based on the funding formula, not on the
Right.
state law.
Right,
So the funding formula's expired.
exactly. So how does that work now to his thing? Because,
And my point, my line of questioning on this is, if they got an extra 5 million boost into OPEB this fiscal year, and I see that it's normally 3.94 million in a normal year, why would we be funding them an additional million if they already got a bonus 5 million last year from us overpaying them?
So basically, these numbers go out to the actuarial every year, and they, based on the census, they recalculate based on earnings in the fund, and so that's the amount for this year. I don't think, and I would have to confirm, that we take that into consideration for our part of this, but I can get that information for
Be
you.
a quick way to save $1 million if they've already been paid for it.
well, and
Just
while
thinking.
you're on that, I was gonna say, did we get the report yet back on what their fund balances are?
I'd have to check on that.
Okay, because that's gonna be, because it's a very specific amount. When you look at that 3,810,905, it's very specific. When you see it, it's not like a general 4 million, 5 million. So my question is, what is that?
So they're coming in next week.
Yes.
Good, okay, so if we
Correct.
can address all
Correct.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next week, the
beautiful.
Board of Ed's coming in to present their budget. So those
Fabulous.
questions will be
Fabulous.
Perfect.
appropriate.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Appreciate
And
it.
you're going to have, just as we move forward,
Yes.
there's more backup slides to those categories you're going to get to.
We
in the
go into a little
presentation.
detail, we definitely go
Yeah.
into more detail
Right.
next week, but if there's specific
Right.
questions about any of those
Right.
lines,
It was just for the commissioners. If you have questions, she's going to go into more detail, so she
That's
may answer
correct.
your question as we move forward.
Yeah, some of them will get answered today, and some of
Yeah.
them we wanted to give a week so that when we come back for the actual public hearing,
Right.
we'll talk to you again or speak with you about anything that you've asked us today.
And the actuary numbers that come forward are basically recommendations to maintain the AAA bond rating when we go to Wall Street. Is that an accurate statement?
I would say it's partially accurate in the sense that it doesn't hurt the AAA, but they will even cautious us that at some point you put too much in OPEB.
correct.
Because you could more wisely use that financial stability somewhere else within the budget.
And that's where I was going with the question. Thank you.
Yeah, yes. So the salary line was impacted by the longevity steps that we have put into place, the current step, the COLA, and new positions that Mark will discuss on slide 6, and the mid-year positions that were awarded last Tuesday. Operating, I think we've talked about this a few times, the largest impact is inflation. Gasoline, electric, supplies, contracted services, where you get the double whammy. Contracted services are going up because contractors have the same inflation impacts that we have. So will that trend continue? I left my crystal ball at home, so I'm not sure about that one, but that's where that huge jump comes from. The remaining lines, debt service, capital projects transfer, and College of Southern Maryland, show a decrease from the prior year. For College of Southern Maryland, I wanted to point out the operating actually increased by 2.4%. You're seeing the negative because they didn't request the tuition of $225,000 that we granted them last year. So operating, no impact, but overall contribution did go down.
Beth, I do have a question as well. So I know this is a forecast, we've had discussions before of why income tax was affected the way it was. You know, we went from 97 million to where it was, you know, remember it was projected, gloom and doom, could have been 30% down.
Yes.
But this is forecasting it to increase. And I know minimum wage affects that to a piece, but that was a powerful unemployment piece when you had 400 plus another $600. I mean, there's people that have never cleared $1,000 a week before and might take them a long time after. That seems like a very generous estimate to think that we would go from 101 to 104 to 108. I mean, why so optimistic?
So, I mean, every time we go on phone calls with the state, everybody's still optimistic about income taxes. They're the quote-unquote experts that we rely on to come up with that. We still kind of think that may be conservative. The hard part is that we don't get the next big income tax distribution until May. So we put forth what we can based on what we know today. May tell a different story. And then the residual effects takes almost 2 years because you're turning your taxes for 21 now. You know, by the time we get to the impact that you're speaking about, it could be 2 or 3 years from now.
Because it was dramatically impactful, the difference. I mean, in a COVID year where people were not working, we received more income tax.
Yes, I mean, we
So
came
it's
before
artificially
you.
inflated.
But the other issue is because unemployment, people are raising wages. You know, minimum wage doesn't really exist today.
No,
'Cause
not
you
really.
can't hire anybody, they can't hire anybody for $15 an hour, doesn't matter what.
Right.
So income tax is gonna go a little bit up just because wages have risen.
Well, but in my fears, I know that's going to be one piece, but how much did it drop from that $600? And how many, you know what I mean? And I know that's the big question mark because how many even went back to work?
Agreed.
And
Oh.
you're still seeing, you know, help wanted signs everywhere you go, and all you keep hearing is you can't find people to work. So that's where I saw it was a consistent increase across there, and I just, you know, I hate being gloom and doom, but with a budget, I'm so cautious.
Right.
So I just was wondering where, and that's what Maryland's thinking.
Yeah, we're relying on the state data, and we did, you know, last year have that close to $9 million positive variance that we were able to come forward and, you know, do a budget adjustment and start funding some projects, you know, so we still feel it's mostly conservative. Pressing forward, again, we'll have additional data in May that hopefully will either confirm.
I mean, you hope people are making more money and
Yes.
doing better, you know, I mean, but I just saw that and I said, well, of course, but.
Commissioners, it's questions like that that have prompted staff to want to set up time with the commissioners as we go forward, one-on-one, just so that if you have, those are more philosophical type questions.
Exactly.
But that's the type of work that we want to do in advance, so don't hesitate to bring it to us. We're setting time up for you.
Yeah, I'm just scared spending something I know I don't have,
Understood.
you know,
And
so.
just to clarify, and we're utilizing the state data on that.
Correct.
Okay,
Because we get the disbursements from the state
makes sense.
Which is normal practice.
Yeah. For both property tax and income tax, the data comes from the state of Maryland. But I do, on a later slide, have potential ideas that might help you out.
Okay, thank you.
So this is the 5-year forecast, which shows balanced budgets for FY '22 and FY '23. Due to the anticipated decrease of the pilot revenue, we have made some adjustments to expenditures for FY '24 through '26, but we will need additional adjustments in order to balance those budgets. And so you can hear a new voice. It's time for Mark.
Commissioners, going back to the original question about whether these are initiatives of the commissioners or not, this particular slide, they're not initiatives necessarily, but some of them are what we've been working on for several years. So when you look at this, it's almost that we have to follow through in some capacity. So you see the career EMS, the EMTs, we've got 8 paramedics, we have 4. That's a program that we've been working on to outfit our rescue providers here in the county. Now, we're always looking at the numbers and how well we're doing at filling those spots. So while we have every intention that these are necessary, but we do offer to the board that as public safety continues to update us on how that service is being provided, these numbers may fluctuate, but that's up to information that we get from our rescue service out there, and also what the Board of County Commissioners know that they can provide funding for as we go forward. So if you look at the Parks and Recreation, the first two items there, we take on parks. Well, we have to outfit those parks with staffing. You can't really take staffing from another park necessarily, because you have to have that on-call staffing. They're not necessarily high-end salaried positions, but they are positions that are necessary to make sure that our public is provided guidance and service while they're out at these new parks. In this particular case, if you consider that we just opened up Ward Farm last week in a ribbon cutting, it's that type of service that we're looking to put out there. The golf course is something that we have this programmed in, although we will withdraw these two and we will incorporate them into the program as the clubhouse actually gets built and is up and running. So we'll work that one as we go forward. So just for example, this is something that we have it in here, we need to talk about it, but it's something that we can actually hold off on. Next slide. So this one here, the very first one, is a little bit controversial for me because it's my recommendation, at least for consideration. I would say that when I look at and what taught me this as a county administrator, and even before that, into whether it was Public Works or the enterprise fund, solid waste, water, sewer, et cetera, we come up against the need for grants all the time. We have several outstanding associates within the county that work within the grant world. We have in finance and budget, it's really the accountability of the funding itself as it passes through the system. It closes out that funding that we have within the grant. We have an individual within public safety that actually manages just about every single FEMA, MEMA, CARES, ARPA. When I say manage, she has her eyes and attention on those grants, and she works with finance and budget to make sure that everything's accounted for. And as you recall, a lot of that's that FEMA funding that we're getting back from ESAISIS. Now it seems like a couple years ago. That funding is just now coming in, and thanks to the due diligence of staff going out there and managing that, you don't get that funding back unless you truly account for what FEMA and the federal government says you have to account for. It works well. And then we have, within the sheriff's office, we have accountability within there. What we don't have an accountability of is someone at, I think, the county administrator's level to be focused on grants that are earmarked from Senator Cardin, Senator Van Halen, Congressman Hoyer, those types of grants that come out. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money that, when we try to put staff focused on it, it's typically someone like me that I don't really have the time to do that. And the individuals that we're talking about, those other three, that's not the right position. It doesn't mean they're not qualified, but it's not an additional duty. This position, I absolutely believe, would pay for itself multiple times over.
That was my question. It sounds like it will pay for itself if done properly.
I would, and that's why this position would actually be a higher grade than the positions we currently have. We've, in the funding that you see there, the recommended amount, it actually includes fringe benefits, so that's not the salary plus fringe benefits.
Do you think we're missing grants by not having that person there?
I absolutely believe we're missing
And that was
grants.
my question, right. I see Al shaking his head in the back. So that, right, and anymore, if you don't know how to write it to the T, you don't get it. I mean, everybody's fighting for the same air.
I'll be honest, the senatorial, congressional, and our delegates actually do a very good job of reaching out to us, and by the time you are able to really pin down those grants, and we can't do it without the county attorney's office. I mean, just the attention that is required, my office is not giving that attention. And I think it's a step in, to me, I think it's a step in the right direction to make sure that we get our fair shot at that grant money. I do believe it'll pay for itself many times over. But again, I have it up there for consideration as we move into the future. The state's attorney's
So,
office has,
excuse me.
yes, sir, I'm sorry.
We have the state's attorney with us. Would you like to come up and defend your request?
Yes, sir, please.
I was hoping somebody would ask.
Don't mind if I do.
I was hoping that the state's attorney's intern could do the grant administration.
$700.
I know.
We're here today, we're asking for.
Please introduce
Oh,
yourself.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Robert Harvey, State's Attorney. We're here asking for the board to consider 2 assistant state's attorney positions, 1 summer intern position. Let me start with the assistant state's attorney 1, which is actually the second in a row there. That attorney would be earmarked to handle domestic violence prosecutions. Last year, we had 308 domestic violence cases. Some of those were in the circuit court, those are the more serious ones. Some were in district court. Currently, we have 1 attorney devoted full-time to DV cases and 1 attorney in district court that handles a part-time responsibility. 308 cases just too much for 1 attorney or 1.5 attorneys, and we're just not keeping pace. So we're asking you to consider a 2nd district court attorney to handle domestic violence cases primarily in the district court. Next to impaired driving, domestic violence is the type of case most frequently prosecuted in Calvert County, and we need this 2nd lawyer to give this area of prosecution the resources it deserves. The senior assistant state's attorney position, which is listed up there, is and by the way, the assistant state's attorney 1 is an entry-level lawyer. Senior assistant state's attorney position, we would designate to handle a variety of functions that are currently spread out among the attorneys in the office to allow the attorneys that are currently having to do some of this stuff part-time to focus exclusively on their trial work. The types of responsibilities I'm talking about are what we call post-conviction cases, which are petitions filed by defendants after they've been convicted in an effort to overturn their conviction based primarily upon the allegation of bad lawyering, violations of probation, sentencing reconsiderations, cold case review, training, which would be in-house, as well as police training. We're currently providing 36 hours of training right now to the officers at the police academy. This lawyer would be in charge of doing that type of function. But most importantly, I'm looking for this attorney to have interface with the Police Accountability Board and the Citizen Charging Committee. That is a new responsibility that is, as you all are very well aware, coming to the county. I can see that there's going to be a need for interaction between our office and those agencies. I'm not sure how much we're going to have, but I anticipate that because this is new, once the public finds out about it, I'm afraid that we're going to hear more complaints about police misconduct. And so I'm asking for this senior assistant state's attorney to interface with those organizations and handle whatever complaints of police misconduct come our way. Summer internship, $700. To tell you the truth, I could probably find that money somewhere else, really. This is for a high school student or.
Well, now you know what happens.
I'll scratch that one out.
But we appreciate it,
Exactly.
Mr. State's Attorney.
Exactly.
Mr. Sister, question, are you seeing domestic violence numbers rise?
Yes.
And I know there's been a big concerted effort at, trying to educate and everything, but that 308, if I'm hearing that correctly, is that per year?
Yeah.
So it's almost, almost 1 a day.
And one attorney cannot, domestic violence cases are unique because of the family dynamics. Those are very difficult cases to prosecute. So difficult, in fact, that I keep a little bit of distance myself.
They got to be very time sensitive. Yeah.
Discussions with victims and witnesses are very time consuming. A lot of back and forth. Yes, I'm going to testify. No, I'm not. This is what I want to see happen. No, I don't. So that's extremely important for our office to be able to focus more attention on that particular need.
It's a shame. That's why I was questioning. It seemed like the number had rose from last time I heard
The
it.
numbers are going up, and what we're also seeing is the severity of the cases. The legislature has made a specific
addition to the law that makes strangulation a form of first-degree assault, which is a felony. And those are the kinds of cases that we're seeing in the domestic violence area, where unfortunately someone puts their hands around somebody else's throat and elevates the case from a basic assault to a first-degree assault, and we're having to prosecute those cases in the circuit court. So we need an additional attorney to help us out there. That's what I have. Any questions?
So how many attorneys do you currently have in staff?
Counting me, 15. Counting me, 15.
How many cases a year do you handle?
Couldn't tell you.
Okay.
Most of the cases, tens of thousands. We have a lot of district court cases. That's where you get most of the action.
Very good.
Have the domestic violence cases, I know we talked how they've gone up. Do you by any possible chance know what they were in 2019 pre-COVID?
No, sir.
I just didn't
That's
know
al-
how
that's
much.
That's also pre-Harvey.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
The numbers were probably pretty high, but COVID changed the dynamics. People are in the house, tensions are high, moods are bad, people are upset, things are happening. So we also see a lot of substance abuse and alcohol in those kinds of cases as well. So I'm trying to make domestic violence a priority. Our domestic violence attorney resigned. We've been able now to replace him with a young lady who's coming in early April who had some experience in St. Mary's County. So I'm very excited about the opportunity to have her on board. She's also a forensic chemist, by the way, so she can help us out with some of our drug and expert witness issues. So she'll be coming in and taking over primary responsibility for domestic violence, but this position will be an assistant to her.
Do you have any other vacancies?
No, sir.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr.
gentlemen.
State's Attorney.
Appreciate it.
Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks again.
Take care.
sir.
Thank you.
All right.
So we're down past the intern that I put a line through. The next item on there, finance and budget, we have since discussed that and will strike that from the chart.
That was my question.
That's the AP technician one?
We did that last week or the week before.
Okay.
So the emergency management grant, if you recall, commissioners, we use MEMA monies during emergencies that will help go towards housing that is in danger along the coast, water damage, cliff damage, et cetera. I do have Al here in the audience, if you'd like for him to get up and explain why that particular position's needed.
So we had talked about that being a contractual position?
Yes, sir, I did talk to Al about that. Al,
And is that including that 164, is that including benefits? Is that the total package?
there's a vehicle rolled up in that as well.
Oh, okay, okay, I was gonna say, because I'm that's popping off the page.
Yeah, I don't know that we're gonna get the vehicle that Al envisioned.
The Ferrari's out. Oh,
I thought he wanted a Bearcat.
Ferrari. And that vehicle I'm asking for career EMS is separate and apart from what Mike's asking for this, this position here. Have Mike Grierson here, Mark.
Okay.
He's better prepared. He developed that, so I'm gonna let him speak for it.
Morning, Commissioners. Mike
Morning.
Grierson, Emergency Management Division Chief. Very quickly, actually, I might ask Kara to come up and speak to you specifically to this position. She is our emergency management specialist. She's actually keeping our heads above water right now, working with our current mitigation projects. But what I can tell you is that position is a grade 723 that we put in. It's starts out at 50,000, so the cost you see there includes everything for startup that would be obviously not a reoccurring cost for that position. Obviously, we've been through some recent devastating storms here in Calvert, and we've learned from those tremendously that I don't want to steal her thunder either, but $1 that we spend now, we could save $6 on the back end. Now, a lot of the FEMA money that we just currently got was for public assistance, I mean public roadways that did nothing for private property out there. We recognize we've got a lot of private properties that are also, we've got very unique cliffs, houses falling off into the bay, unlike many other counties. But we're trying to work through with that mitigation grants as we find out, and reiterating what County Administrator said, with a lot of these grants, very cumbersome, a lot of information, a lot of time consumed putting these projects together to continue. But we are recognizing the citizens are aware of these programs now. A lot more folks are starting to call in, looking, asking questions. We're trying to meet their needs and work through these programs as much as possible to meet their needs. So specific to this, if you don't mind, if I could ask Kara just to speak very quickly about some of the funding for this very quickly.
So this is an interesting process. Mark turns it off to Al turns it off to Mike, and now we get the person that really does the work.
But
She should have just come up in the beginning.
But she's the specialist.
She's gonna call her grandfather
She
up
does
here
the
soon.
work.
I don't need my grandfather.
You're not gonna pass the buck. See, she's doing the work. I don't need nobody.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kara
Morning.
Buckmaster, Emergency Management Specialist. I currently manage the hazard mitigation grants, and that is one of several of my job duties. However, I think it's important to state that it consumes about 2/3 of my time, and it does take away from other very important things that I'm responsible for, such as updating our emergency operations plan, conducting our local emergency planning committee, and all community outreach and preparedness activities that we conduct in our office. So these grants are very important. They cannot slip, but they have become very taxing in our office, which is one of the reasons this position would be so important. In regard to the position itself, with each grant, there is a 5% management cost, which can be requested. To put that in perspective, we currently have 39 repetitive loss properties in Calvert County. The cost share, the cost-effective memo that FEMA puts out would be a maximum of $205,000 per that. Generally, they don't cost that much, but if we average it out, 5% of $205,000 for 39 properties would be about $400,000 that could contribute to this position. Additionally, there are 183 properties along the cliffs in Calvert County. The cost-effective memo that FEMA puts out would be $324,000 per property. Generally, these are much higher than that, but to be conservative for this estimate, that would provide nearly $3 million eventually that could contribute to this position. Now, that wouldn't be all at once, because for me, as an individual, the most that of these projects that I can maintain at one time is about 5 properties at a maximum, but there is a lot of potential there. Additionally, FEMA is now they're moving their priorities to community-based mitigation projects because that does a lot more good for a lot more people. So the same amount of effort could assist a lot more people. If you take, for example, one roadway elevation and culvert replacement costs about $150,000. The 5% management cost for that would be $7,500. So there's lots of potential within the grant itself to support this position. It is very necessary and important for the future of the well-being of Calvert County because of the increased frequency, severity of disasters that we are experiencing. And just one final food for thought, imagine if Tropical Storm Isaias hadn't been a disaster, because we were able to be proactive in our mitigation efforts. That is really the future of mitigation and why it's so important.
Questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Should have started with her.
I'll take responsibility for that.
Don't do that no more.
So the next item on the list, Commissioners, is Fleet Maintenance Service Specialist.
So is that a mechanic?
It's certainly related.
Okay.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tom Jones, Deputy Director for DPW General Services. Fleet actually falls under my section. And speaking with Division Chief John Sypa, is what his request for his Fleet Management Service Specialist is that a few years ago, I'm going to date myself here, when I was actually down there, this position I had currently held before I was received or got the Division Chief position for Buildings and Grounds. when I left Fleet at that time, John took the chance to use that, and he didn't fill it. He actually just thought he could do, all of his internal programming, administrative parts and everything without that position. As I was speaking to him, and he's out today, is why he's not here. As I was speaking to him, he wants to bring that position back on to help support the administrative side of the fleet management, is what he's doing. It's a grade 721 who would work 40 hours a week, just like the rest of the staff generally would.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
To add to that, Commissioners, having been the first department or division that actually started when the county hired me, there were issues within because it was a brand-new position 21 years ago, or brand-new division. A lot of what the county administrator's office actually managed, some of the admin work that's now performed. When I took over as county administrator, I sent that work down to the Division of Fleet Maintenance where it belongs, and that's directly tracking all of the insurance, all of the tags. Instead of sending it to me to look at it and sign it and send it back to them, and then now that position would also take on that responsibility as well, which was an additional duty that I gave them. The next position is Park Manager for Natural Resources. She's already there.
I am. Good morning, Commissioner Shannon is all Director of Parks and Recreation. So the Park Manager position is for the central area of the county. We do not have a park manager to oversee Biscoe Gray, Gatewood Preserve, and Battle Creek. So that area along Grays Road is an area that's ripe for programming and a lot of great trails and a lot of great opportunities in that area. But at this time, we are not staffed enough to take advantage of a lot of those opportunities to provide the public. So this park manager position is similar to, say, the park manager we have at Flag Ponds Nature Park or at Kings Landing Park.
Thank
Any
you.
questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Commissioners, we have Assistant Museum Registrar. I believe we have Jeff Murray in the audience.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jeff Murray, Director at the Calvert Marine Museum and the Chesapeake Beach Railway Museum. I've got a prepared statement, so I'll just go through that really quickly. But as we consider this is a move from part-time to full-time for an incumbent, and it would be essentially restoring some of the positions from 2016 when a reorganization was done. So the current hours assigned to this position, 17 hours per week, 34 hours of pay period, and they lack the professional time needed to adequately fulfill the increasing requirements of the position. And this position is essentially our collections management position. It is an Assistant Registrar 1 at grade 719. The position had an increase in workload due to the renovation and habitation of the former Randall Cliff School, now an off-site collection, storage, preservation, and office facility for the museum. Travel between Randall Cliff and the museum to ensure proper care and storage of the collection to facilitate future exhibits will now take additional time. Professional demands of the role for both the Railway Museum and the Randall Cliff location are strained at the current hourly level. The county's resolution in establishing the Railway Museum as an entity of Calvert County government requires, in part, to have a full-time collections position to preserve and maintain the collections and the exhibits to the public as part of its mission. The Assistant Museum Registrar position requires a learned and dedicated set of skills that cannot be met using volunteers. The ability of the incumbent to meet requirements of this now expanded position necessitates it become full-time. Doing so will set the incumbent and any future occupants along with the museum up for future success. And I just to speak to some of the reorganization that happened in 2016, just so you have a clear idea, when the curator retired, the curatorial responsibilities were transferred to the director of the Marine Museum, and that position was not replaced. So we have added the Randall Cliff off-site facility to the Railway Museum, and we have essentially, we're working with the same amount of, actually less staff than we were back in 2016 when the curator retired. So, question?
So at the Railway Museum, is there community financial support that goes on?
So I will I will just say that as Marine Museum has a strong foundation with lots of dedicated professionals to fundraise for the Marine Museum's efforts. The Friends of the Chesapeake Beach Railway Museum are a wonderful group. They do wonderful things. They help us out. They volunteer, and they have a limited fundraising capacity, but they do not have the means to take on something like this.
We
Or-
should
or the
talk about
resources.
sometime how we try to create that avenue for the Railway Museum.
I welcome that, sir. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that is gentlemen, that's the last of the positions?
Breezy Point?
Oh, yes. And
I mean, we can just cut it out if you like.
Well, I think.
No, please don't cut it out.
No,
She's quick.
I think she has a really good solution to traffic control down there that she's going to explain right now.
Direct and dissolve.
Absolutely. So at Breezy Point, the traffic control specialist, so we piloted this the end of last season as we were struggling to have deputies sign up for the detail to help control traffic, like right at the gate to Breezy Point to get folks in and out and make sure that it's not a hassle or headache for the residents in the area. And it worked out very well to be able to do that. We had a couple of folks that were able to be at the front of the park property and direct that traffic, making sure people were coming in, coming out, not blocking the entrances to the marina, as well as communicate with the deputies that were up on top of the hill to make sure that they weren't sending down too many people, or we were getting close to full, those types of things. So that worked out very well. The cost of this would be paid out of our Breezy Point operating budget that is already existing. It would just move from the amounts that we're currently allocating for those additional deputies to this position, which is about $20 less per hour.
Shannon, I know last year, because Breezy Point is its own thing,
is.
with traffic, and we had talked about fees and rates of that nature. Do we need to revisit that back before we get into that? Or are we kind of set going in?
With last season, which was, we still had about a 50% capacity due to COVID. We had those increased rates for out-of-county residents, and it seemed to control it a lot better. I don't think that at this time there is a need to further increase that. There was only a couple of days last season where at the 50% capacity we even reached capacity.
Because so much of that traffic is out-of-county traffic.
About 90%.
So, when I see, this, request, obviously I know why, because, we know the traffic down there, but if it's being caused out-of-county ought to pay for it.
Well, it is already being paid for because it's really just a reallocation of funding that's already allocated.
She's got the money. She's just creating positions.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We just need to make sure we charge more than North Beach.
And we
Because
are
I hear
still
they're
look-
raising their rate. I don't know if that's true or not.
Is there still a possibility of at some point in the future looking at a online ticket purchasing and/or something to help limit some of that traffic congestion?
We could at this time. There are still some projects that need to be completed in order to maintain an appropriate number of parking spaces in order to do that. Right now, we're very dependent on the changing tides, as cliche as that sounds, but our parking does get limited when we have unusual tides or storms that take up some of our parking. So we do have projects in CIP that will help mitigate that, but at this time it would be too difficult to determine the number of spots available on any given day.
Because I know for the residents, it's miserable at times. You know, I mean, you can't get back to your house. I mean, you know, we've seen all the extremes, and I know it's been progressively getting better, I believe.
Yes, last season, we had a lot of compliments on how it was handled last season, so we're moving in the right direction.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Now you can move on.
Thank you, sir. So we drop down to slide 8. This is a vehicle related to the position, or to EMS. And, yes, sir. And Commissioner Hart, I believe you did have a question on this particular item.
Good morning, Commissioners. Al Jeffrey, Deputy Director of Public Safety.
Yeah, can you tell us what you're using it for?
So as EMS grows throughout the county, just not career EMS, but also the volunteers, we're finding that we're doing more and more purchases, centralized purchases and distribution from 315 Stafford Road. So it'll be a multi-use vehicle. One of them would be logistics, delivering equipment and supplies, restocking the hospital's vending machine to make sure that we have equipment in there for units to resupply as they come into the hospital. Also resupplying the EMS lockers at all the departments where we have career EMS and assisting, if needed, the volunteers with maintaining equipment and supplies in there. The other part would be the use of it as a training sim lab, where we would put a sim person in the back of this van, take it to each individual department and do constant training, they call it continuing education units training, to help all of our providers, both career and volunteer, maintain their CEU hours so they can recertify on an annual basis. And the other part would be we send groups of people out for off-site training, would be to use that van to transport them back and forth from that training. One of the advantages would be to offset, we're actually in the process of receiving our own training site certification, where we'll be able to, the career EMS and other staff and the volunteers will be able to present classes to EMS staff in the county to offset a lot of the costs that we send people out to, so we can do it in-house. The sim van would help us do that. The logistics part would help us deliver us our supplies, and then transport students to other outside classes that we can't provide, such as more advanced classes like the cadaver lab up in Hanover, Maryland, things like that. We go to two or three times a year.
So, see, you generated a lot of questions.
I was just saying, do you need the siren and the emergency stuff all over?
That's an emergency vehicle. So say we get a mass casualty incident, we'll be able to load that equipment. We have a mass casualty unit down at St. Leonard. We'll be able to assist them and increase that footprint for a mass casualty incident by loading that van up and taking additional supplies out. They'll need to be resupplied. You never know. I hate to say it's a minimal cost. It is you're looking at $17,500 for the siren, the lights, the graphics to identify the van, to make sure it's identifiable if it's responding, and the $7,500 for the mobile radio. That's what it costs.
So just so everybody's clear, all three of these items are related to that van. So the van is actually $87,500 when you do all this stuff.
$87,000, yes.
And who's going to be driving it?
It'll be career EMS staff. It'll be,
Okay.
We have in the process one of those projects to identify one of our positions as a EMT logistics officer, to handle all our logistics, not just medical equipment, but the uniforms, the PPE, all the equipment, maintain the warehouse levels. So our inventory, maintain our inventory of stock. When you take one off the shelf, we put one back. We order one to put it back on the shelves. We don't order one for one. We usually try to maintain like average a 90-day supply of equipment and medications and stock on the shelves, so as we take it off, we can resupply it. That would be that logistics person's responsibility. They'd be primarily using the van. When they're not using it, it'd be a training officer to take it out to do the training in the stations.
How many utility vehicles does public safety currently have?
Public safety has one vehicle,
No.
PS1. Fire rescue EMS, what do you want?
I see more than one
so-
vehicle
Oh, no.
running around that has public safety written on the side of it. There's
That's
like
right.
3 pickup trucks parked down at the jail that have public safety written on the side of them.
So
Who'd
we
they
have-
belong to?
So we have an expedition that's assigned to public safety. We have 2 vehicles, a pickup truck with a snowplow and a salt spreader that is assigned to fire rescue EMS. We have an expedition, a white expedition that's assigned to fire rescue EMS. That pickup truck is a secondary hauler for the trailer and for the hazmat trailer. We have.
So why don't we just replace one of those pickup trucks with a van instead of adding an additional vehicle? And I don't know why we have a snowplow, because every fire department has one.
It's historically, we've been responsible for plowing the fire
Well,
departments.
I think we should do an inventory of all the fire departments, because I think every one of them has their own snowplow now.
Don't
That was done
disagree
almost
with
10
you.
years ago.
So we should reevaluate that situation now, and I think we need to look at replacing something you already have instead of adding another vehicle.
So the pickup truck is new. We just got it this year.
Well, that was a mistake on your part.
Okay,
You should have thought ahead.
What's the oldest one of those vehicles? You said you had an SUV?
yes, but that is currently under replacement also
There you go.
For what?
for an SUV.
Well,
Okay.
why don't we get a van?
Can we put an extra row in it and call it a van?
Yeah.
I'll discuss it with the director and fire rescue EMS division chief.
Because it sounds to me like, we're looking for a logistics van that can be utilized on occasion. And if we have training that has to go out of county or something like that, it seems to me like a lot of that stuff might even be after regular hours, so the van can be multi-utilized by different people throughout the week and month. And
So we do, and I might have misrepresented the logistics part of it, but we're sending logistics people out every day to restock and make sure that we have adequate supplies.
And what are you using today to do that?
We're using one of the either
One of the pickup
PS1s,
trucks.
we're using the EMS supervisors are doing it right now, which takes away from their time on the street and being able to provide. It's an additional duty we've assigned to them until we can get this addressed. And it's taking time away from them, going around making sure that their people are properly trained. So it's,
But I thought that's what you just said, the EMS staff was going to be the one responsible for driving this vehicle to get the logistics and supplies done.
right, identified logistics person, not
okay.
the EMS supervisor.
Gotcha.
EMS supervisor has duties, and this is an added duty to the EMS supervisor right now that really takes up a lot of their time and away from their staff where they're supposed to be training, operating with them, making sure that they're up to the latest training standards.
Well, if they're overwhelmed, we got great volunteers throughout the entire county that can
We
step in
do,
and help out.
and we work with them very hand in hand, and they
Right.
attend a lot of the training that the supervisors put on.
Yeah,
So we're working very well together in that.
fantastic.
I think for this particular item, we should reevaluate our plan moving forward,
I'll take it back and sit with staff down there and figure out.
especially since you have a vehicle that's up for replacement.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
all right.
Thank you.
I made a note, sir.
Because I'll get to my comments about the budget when we're done. I'm not as optimistic as Beth is.
Here we go.
So much for the record setter.
Yeah. Not quite. One more minute.
Any questions?
Speed screen.
Yeah, slide 9, Commissioners, is I get the Director of Technology Services that'll help walk us through here. There's a little bit of savings in here that I can identify, but I'll let her walk through and explain why these are necessary.
Commissioners, Amy Lawson, Director of Technology Services. So I'm going to go ahead and walk through each one of these briefly. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. So the first one is a load balancer. The load balancer is a virtual hardware that allows us to move load from one server to another so we don't overload one particular server. It also provides some security initiatives for the servers as well. This is about $32,000. Any questions on the load balancer?
We have no clue what
I
it
just
is.
wish I-
How are we gonna answer a
I
question?
don't really think you need to go to
Gotta have
explain,
one of them.
explain printer, or, you know,
I don't have a load balancer, so I can't.
yeah,
Would you let
I
me-
mean,
Tire
I'll just open it up
balancer,
for
I understand.
questions and.
I'm going to be honest, I'm going to defer to Mr. Willis on this stuff. I mean, it's,
Commissioners,
I don't
Yes,
think you
sir,
need
I'm
a line by line here.
I can almost understand everything a little bit, like 5% maybe, all the way down to EAM because I'm thinking emergency action message. So what's EAM or IBM Maximo?
So EAM or IBM Maximo is the software that is used by utilities for being able to track vertical and horizontal utilities underground and above ground. So things like your water pipes, your sewage lines, your fire hydrants. So we don't have this capability right now, and it's one of the things that we would like to add to the county so that we can track all of the assets that we have for utilities. And then a couple other that I'll point out just because they may not be self-explanatory. Bluebeam upgrade or a switch to DigiPlan. This is for planning and zoning. This is the software they use to mark up blueprints. Forerunner is also for planning and zoning. This is the software used for floodplain management. And then if I can speak to the training real quick, the reason why we have $30,000 for training is because when I received my 5 new positions a year and a half ago, the previous director did not remember to include the training funds in the budget. So this is to recap, to gather up those funds and be able to use them for those staff.
Anybody want to hazard a question?
Yes,
Chris
absolutely.
is brave.
I would love to congratulate you on the fact of having the least dollar amount at the bottom of any of the slides.
Thank you.
Well, no, I checked, and in the future, it just goes up.
Okay.
So, that's
We tried very hard.
that's the only one that's 6 figures, so, thank you.
Yeah, we try very hard to use the taxpayer money wisely in
Thank
technology
you.
services.
Thank
We
you.
greatly appreciate it.
And
Mike, did you
Commissioners,
have a
while this is technology services up here explaining it, this actually supports the entire county government. So, if there are no further questions on this slide, I'm sure we're all very familiar with
Are
what
you
it
sure
meant
one
now.
load balancer is enough?
It is because my director told me one was enough.
I don't know, this just seems like a lot of load here, you know?
Oh,
There's a
there
lot of
is.
load.
Oh, there is.
On slide 10, gentlemen, additional, these are initiatives that, they're a little bit different than what we were doing before. So Sheriff's Office,
He was here, he stepped out.
so this is, part of this is a program for the side reader identification tag
So
readers.
why don't we, if he's going to be here, why don't we wait till he's back? Why don't you
Okay.
skip them for now?
All right, will do. And so also where you see market adjustment, I will skip those as well because he may want to be here for that.
Yep. Okay, he's back. We killed enough time, he came back. Yes, sir.
Lieutenant Colonel, I had just mentioned the license plate recognition program, the 20,000 there.
The LPR?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you need comment from me on that, or any questions?
Yeah, we want to hear why, what it does.
See, and we initiated this little history, and obviously, Colonel McDowell will go to it. It's actually saved a lot of lives, and it's actually solved a lot of crimes. We've even got the incident in Accokeek, was an armed robbery we pulled from these things. So it's actually, it took a lot of heat. It really did. A lot of people, they felt it was Big Brother type thing, but that program's been pretty remarkable, and obviously, Colonel McDowell can.
So if we've been doing it, why is there additional money needed?
So, you have to forgive me, I was out of the room. Is this for the additional standalone LPRs?
New initiatives, items to be considered by the BOCC. The first item, number 1, license plate recognition program is actually 500, 17.5 will be reoccurring, and you're asking for 20.
Okay, so, again, I'm at a little bit of a disability or disadvantage on this, but what I will say is that we do have requests for what we call standalone license plate readers. And they will be located at key areas around the county for where if we have a crime occur, we can capture that data for vehicles leaving in and out. Now, the data is stored solely in that equipment, and we use it as an investigatory tool.
So this is like when McGee on NCIS goes and checks all the other cameras across the entire network in order to find the guy getting away?
I haven't watched NCIS in about 10 years, but probably so.
Okay.
And Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, I sat in a couple of these meetings. I want to say the time of an incident, so if somebody's on a stolen vehicle, say, this thing can give us their where they were in about within 3 minutes?
Well, I'll give you a real life example.
Yeah,
We
please.
had a pharmacy broken into in the south end of the county. And through license plate reader data, we were able to establish that one of the tags associated with a pharmacy break-in from another county had been in our county. We knew that they had come into the county and left the county. And actually, they weren't successful in our county, but they were in St. Mary's County. But we were able then to know that they had been here, and we knew that that was part of that tri-county crime spree.
So you said these are stationary units. Are these stationary units or are these mobile units on the cars?
No, these are stationary.
Stationary units.
Yes, sir.
So, and I remember the discussion because we couldn't get agreement with Prince George's County or something to
Correct.
put one up to the county line.
Correct.
Is that what we're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Because I thought they were a lot more money.
Well, this is a cost share, isn't it? Dave's like, is a cost share with the with PG on some of this, isn't there? That was the attempt, I believe.
So our data funnels now through the Fusion Center with Prince George's County. So we don't have to interact so much anymore with the Maryland Coordination and Analysis Center because Prince George's County shoulders all of that for us. If you follow what I'm saying, it's a little bit of a partnership, but it's definitely to the advantage of Calvert County.
And this is for 1 unit or 3 units?
I believe it, and again, Commissioner, I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage here, but I believe it's for 3 or 4 standalone units. And I can certainly get the exact details and bring them back before the board.
Please, because I know at one point we were looking at, there's basically, 4 access points to the county, is that correct, from out of county?
Yeah, but these aren't all necessarily key access points. These are other areas in the county.
And I know, well, I'll wait till we can.
Yes,
get
please.
Yeah.
Let me get you the actual information.
Okay.
Lesson learned here is don't leave the room, right?
And Lieutenant Colonel, the reason for this is actually to have these types of questions so that when we come back next week.
Yes.
So this is kind of preemption for that. So.
Excellent.
And your next item is market adjustment?
Okay.
So the market adjustment is, what we're looking at is, this is really, it's always going on throughout the state. We're looking at it in the southern Maryland area. So the dollar amount that you see there, and also for the detention center, is that comparison out in our community. So it's there not as a rock solid number necessarily, but it's there because we're doing our due diligence to try to figure out what that market value is and do the right thing going forward.
Okay, so for the public out there that's listening, what all this rhetoric is about is a pay raise for the sheriff's office and the officers that work in the detention center, right? Is that correct? I mean, we keep saying market adjustment, but what we're talking about is a pay raise for the deputies and the correctional officers at the jail, right?
Well, I'd like to refer to it as a meaningful discussion, not rhetoric.
I understand, but I mean, the administrator used the terms, and you have too, market adjustment.
That's
and I
correct.
just want to explain for the public, that's what the market adjustment is. It's
Fair enough.
adjusting salaries because of competition in other regions for officers. And just trying to, so people understand what we're talking about.
Sure.
Yeah, that's all.
And I just want to clarify, it says includes benefits at 0.34%. That is not 0.34%, that is 34%, correct?
Well, so normally we add 55 point, what, When you do the, yes, it's 34%.
Okay.
Multiplied by
that-
.34,
that-
yeah.
That dot sitting there
Yeah.
made it sound like less
Yeah.
than
Yeah,
1%.
sorry about that.
Oh, yeah.
So-
Yeah, that dot.
Okay, that's.
But the
that
difference
dot
between the
should be
normal,
Ignore the dot.
Yes.
34% benefits, okay, thank you.
And this is not related to the sheriff's office or the detention center. It's salaries across government. Benefits cost a third to 50% of the salary. So that decimal should not be there because it is misleading.
Right.
correct.
It
Our
makes it-
apologies on that one. But
And
it
I
did
just want to reiterate,
But
it's
this-
not just the sheriff's
This
or
has
the
nothing to
jail.
do with pay parity though, right?
No, oh, well, the cost adjustment, yes.
Right, that's what
But
it's
that
listed.
doesn't catch them up, is what I'm saying.
Well-
This amount.
Market adjustment and pay parity, I think, are being used synonymously in these two examples.
Right.
Yeah,
In fact,
gentlemen-
on my sheet, it says pay parity, on the screen, it says market adjustment.
Right.
Gentlemen, that's a correction that I'll take responsibility for. So we can say pay parity, but the reality is, whether we call it a market adjustment or a pay raise, what we did was we looked out in the community at what everybody else was making, and we're trying to make an adjustment based on that information.
My question is this amount, the 1 million, that wouldn't bring all of them up to where they're
That's not
supposed to be?
steps. That's not
2.4.
steps.
It's an adjustment within the Southern Maryland community.
It's to make a more competitive rate.
It's making it more competitive across the board. So we're not looking, well, I'm not trying to say that person makes $1.50, my person's gonna make $1.50. What we're saying is that based on the market that's out there, and that's where the market rate came from, it's not we're not trying to pay everybody something just because somebody else is making that money. What
Right.
we're trying to do is to
Bring 'em
bring
up
them
in
up
line with it.
competitively with their surrounding counties.
Would this bring them up even with the surrounding counties or more?
Well, it's always changing, so we're trying to get as close as we can. We're not trying to do a penny for penny because it's just never gonna work.
And we're waiting on a consultant report right now, I believe.
Yes.
but I did want to explain why we used 34, not 0.34% instead of the 55 is because an increase would not influence health insurance. That's already built into their normal salary.
Right.
But it would impact workers' comp, the FICA, and all the other items. That's why, and pension.
Makes
That's why
sense. Makes
it's not
sense.
the full 55.
But the decimal just
Yes.
throws us off.
And I would like,
34,
I
not
wish it was
0.34.
.34.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should just be a parenthesis without the dot, 34%, that's all.
I would like to know the actual percentage increase. For example, if a person's getting paid $20 an hour and this is going to bring them up to 25, that's a 25% increase. You know, we all look at cost of living increases, and I'm not trying to tie this directly into cost of living, because right now with the way stuff like that's going and increases in inflation, it's getting out of control. But how far below the market are we? How much percentage are we having to go up in order to get to that market?
So
that
those are the
rate?
That's what the
details.
consultant, I think, will
Correct,
will
those are the
answer all
details
that.
we're working through right now
And
with the
I'm not
consultant.
asking for a question today, I'm just, in my own mind, I like to look at percentages, because if we're 10% behind and inflation is at 10%, how in the heck are we gonna come up with 20% to bring somebody up to par? And utilizing those numbers is what I have to try and wrap my head around.
Sure.
Yep.
And then after looking at the percentages, then actually look at the dollar amounts and see how bad it is.
So I don't know if you're covering detention center, there's just a lawn maintenance contract adjustment for $8,000.
Yeah, gentlemen, with the exception of one more item on here, most of this is pretty straightforward. It's necessary. The detention centers, even I did back when I was within Public Works, we started programs to use inmates to do just about everything we can. And the reality is that we really need to take care of some of that without the inmate interaction, especially at the detention center, because you start taking them inside and outside of restricted areas. I'm not trying to speak fully on behalf of the detention center, but in this particular case, we have a program to do grass cutting. We'd just like to do the grass cutting.
It's just an adjustment. Yeah, everything else on the list is pretty,
I will say, with the exception of highway maintenance, the rest of it's pretty straightforward,
Yep.
as is the highway maintenance line item.
Colonel McDowell, I think
Thank
we're
you.
done with you.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
Thank you.
We moved on.
Thank you.
But
Yes, sir.
You can give it a shot, sir, if you want to.
A shot.
Oh, no pun intended. So with, and I believe I have highway, but I think I can explain this.
You have highway.
Is JR coming up?
Yep.
So on behalf of Highway, I will say that there are several items in this section that I removed. The reason that I removed it is
We
a
can't
lot of
afford
it, a lot of it you don't know what the cost is going to be anyway, and you can't just throw a lot of money and hold it up in the budget when you know you're going to have to do an end-of-year reconsolidation of funding anyway. What you're experiencing right now with the tree damage that we had, with the snow damage, we always exceed the amount of monies that you put in those line items, and you always do a sure up at the end of the year. To try to guess what that is just a guess. So the amount, I took that out, because you're gonna have to do it anyway. So what you see here is an increase to particular line items like stone and pipe that allow them to do more of the jobs that they're out there doing, and I'll turn it over to Jay.
JR, you have anything to add to what the administrator's already described?
No, I'll pretty much piggyback off of what Mark said. So most of the increase is for supplies such as stone, pipe. We've seen about a 20 to 30% increase on materials. So that's kind of what we're trying to cover, so we can at least continue the same amount of work we're currently doing and then some. We have a plan that some of our special project contractors, within their contract, they also have an additional fee for them to bring materials to the job, such as like when we're constructing, say, Dow Road. What we plan on doing is basically creating a supply yard at Highway, so the county will buy the gravel at the reduced price compared to what our contractors would charge. So the only thing we're paying is to haul the material from Highway to the job versus buying the material also at a markup through some of our other contractors. So that's part of the increase for that also.
So with the piping and stuff, I know it's gone up in price, but it also, to get it right away is becoming a problem. So you probably need to keep some of that on hand.
It is.
Because if you have an emergency job, you can't even get the pipe for 2 weeks, you know what I mean?
We're looking at about a 2-month turnaround from
Yeah,
the time
2 months,
we order
yeah.
to the time it shows up.
Right.
Along with a 20 to 30% increase. We had to rebid our pipe contract last year because the price went up.
Right.
And we're concerned we're gonna have to do the same thing starting this summer.
So we need to have some of that on hand, so, for the emergency jobs.
Yes, sir. Any additional questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Slide 11, gentlemen. The first one, the natural resources, that one has been withdrawn by the director, so that 5,000 will be stricken. I think we have the director of our, yes, our library
First
system.
item under, at the top, natural resources.
Good morning, Commissioners. Carrie
Morning.
Wilson, Executive Director of the Public Library. On behalf of the Board of Library Trustees, our library staff, our 50,000 regular card holders, and the 24,500 kids card holders, just really want to thank you for your current and historic support of the library system. That's what makes it one of the best in the state. I mean, just totally unbiased perspective there.
Absolutely.
So the first thing there is supplies for passport service. We'd like to extend our passport services to our southern branch to make those more accessible across the county. We'd like to add $4,000 to our continuing education budget. We have over 60 staff who need to get 90 hours of continuing education every 5 years in order to remain certified with the state retirement system. The $1,000 is our share of the Calvert .com website. So we go in with community resources on funding that website. It's never been in our budget before because we were able to pull money from other places, but as our budget gets tighter, I've had to ask for that up front. The $8,050 is a fee for our app maintenance. We were able to purchase a library app with CARES Act money through the state library a couple years ago. This is the ongoing maintenance fee for that. So it lets customers check out in the stacks using their mobile device. They can check our library events calendar, register for programs, place holds, do everything right from their phone. $9,000 is part of the data renewal cost for hotspots. So we have about 181 hotspots that are lendable, borrowable by the community. We have not seen usage decline on those. We are seeking grant money for that, so if we're able to fund that through grant money, we'll let finance know that that can come out. $25,000 is supplemental funding for funds that are already been allocated in the library budget to hire a contractor to help with fundraising for the Twin Beaches capital campaign. That's going to build capacity for future capital campaigns as well, which ultimately should make some building projects a little less expensive for the county. 50,000 is our big ticket ask this year, and that's for our digital collection. We saw usage of our downloadable book, audiobook, downloadable streaming services double over the course of the pandemic. And unfortunately, those materials are much more expensive than our physical collection. And while, we've seen fewer people come through the door, the lessening of our physical collection does not meet the increase in the cost of our digital collection. So we're asking for some additional funds to maintain those collections. We are also seeking through state and federal law to work on the price of those materials because they are much more expensive for libraries than they are for consumers. But it's really important, obviously, to the library to provide those services to those who can't afford to purchase them for themselves. And then the $27,500 just goes to computer replacements. We're trying to get to a 5-year replacement cycle for our public computers and staff computers. Of course, our public computers are a vital resource for workforce development, continuing education for our community. Any questions about that? I scared those two off.
You sure did. You cleaned the house.
All right.
Well, you only need 3, so.
Right.
That's right. Thank you, gentlemen.
I think we're good. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
And gentlemen, the last item on this slide is the operating increase for the Board of Education, $5,362,000.
So that's just a plug.
And that's some of
Because
the
we've
stuff
all
next
heard
week.
what they're coming in to ask for, and it's not $5 million.
So we started out with, they got 134 last year. The original estimate we did that we put in the recommended was 138, but they're asking for 5 million above what we put in the staff. So it's a $4 million increase already that we recommended, which we can talk about in a second, and then the additional 5 million that gets you to the 9.
Does that 5 million include steps and COLAs? Or is the 9 million request gonna be that plus steps and COLAs?
I'm just,
Because
I'm
remember
told.
last time when they negotiated 2 steps, we kind of didn't anticipate that. We had 1 step here. Then they came back with 2, really kind of caught us a little flat-footed, but then we adjusted. So I was just hoping to get the full request up front, so there's no surprises.
I think you'll get most of those details next Tuesday when
Okay.
they come before you. But we can make sure that that they have that data with them.
And that doesn't include any new positions at all, if I understand that.
Nope, no new initiatives, no new positions.
Or the
That's all-
CIP request.
Oh, no, that's completely separate. But,
Right.
Yeah, the 9 million, they tell me, is just steps,
And-
COLA,
And none of that goes towards the Kerwin Commission.
and
either,
inflation.
correct?
Nope,
Right.
9 million. So anyway, we'll have fun with them next week.
Yeah,
Big difference from $1 to $1 million.
I was just thinking the same thing.
And Sharon will be back next week, so.
Oh, aren't you happy?
I mean, and.
All right.
and- yeah.
Next.
So really, this is just a kind of a consolidation of those other slides of the dollar amounts, but please keep in mind that some of those positions were removed, some of the initiatives could be removed as we go forward. So that number would, of course, that 5 million's in there that we just talked about, but then otherwise that number would go down from what we discussed earlier. Not a lot, but some.
So your presentation today is a balanced budget, correct?
Correct.
And you've included in here $9 million for the school?
No, we only included the 4 million. The $5 million is in the new initiatives that we went through.
And does your balanced budget include COLAs and steps for all county employees?
Yes.
And does your budget include market corrections for the sheriff's office and the detention center?
It does not include that. That's on the new initiatives.
So that's what's confusing about this, Beth,
Okay.
is you've got that in the presentation, but it's not part of the final. For me.
Correct.
So that's,
Okay, so we always start out with what the departments request, and then we meet with them and we go through, and we always make them put everything in the new column if it wasn't part of last year. Then we meet with them and discuss, because sometimes different departments think new is different things. Some people think if it's $1 more than their request last year, that that's new, and that's not necessarily the case. If it's an increase in cost, like they have a signed agreement that has costs built into it, a 3% increase. That's still their base, because all we're doing is now still providing the same service or buying the same product, it costs more. If it's new, meaning they didn't have it last year, they're trying to do something new, they're trying to hire new staff, that all goes in the new column, and the guidance that we said was staff was not recommending anything new. So that's the last few slides that we went through, are the new requests. We didn't include, well, we did mark a couple that we did include, but that we did not include in the staff recommended that
Right.
is on your plate to decide.
So just for me and for the public, that balanced budget doesn't include most of the stuff we just talked about,
Correct.
which
But my
I'll
last
show my
slide-
math later.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, just the fast math, 9 million?
Yes, at least. Yeah.
Right, so now I hate being Mr. Gloom and Doom, nothing like that, but as we discussed earlier, I don't like spending money that I don't have. That's a very dangerous and irresponsible way. I know that's the state numbers on income tax, but it gives me pause. We know what the pilot program does. That number's been kind of holding true, you know. There's been some speculation, well, it could do this, could do that. It's been pretty consistent. So that gives pause. So I don't want to set unrealistic expectations, and I know this is an election year, and I would really hope people are not using this as an election year to manipulate the budget. At the end of the day, you got to care about the folks here in the long term. So I would not accuse anybody doing that, but sometimes it's an easy go-to, and I hate being blunt like that, but, oh, you don't care about this, you don't care about that. I care about the long, healthy welfare of this county, much past 1 year.
So we did come up with some possible saving ideas to consider if there were some initiatives that you wanted to fund. So we could, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Commissioners, at this point, in the past, finance and budget would typically brief a slide like this, and staff would attack finance and budget. This slide's up there because I asked finance and budget to put it up there. I think I owe it to not just the citizens, but the Board of County Commissioners to take a look at, you know, I'm not saying do any of it, but I'm saying the common sense approach here is that what we're telling you is that our initiatives are more than what we had there to begin with. And we might know more in May when that final check comes out, but we don't know any of that yet. So I want you to have this information here. You know, if we reduced our operating expenses by 1%, 2%, 3%, that's the savings. I'm not saying reduce the COLA, but I'm saying from 4 to 3.5 to 3 to 2.5, that's the savings. We have more of the health premium benefits in the bank than that 2158 that is shown there. But we could take that funding and put it towards some of this, like the steps that we talked about. And that would get you through fiscal year 23. But we all know that that adds up in fiscal year 24.
Right, it's reoccurring.
That's right.
Is
And then
there-
with the BOE, you see there what that's listed as, and of course, we could always do something different with that. That's for your information.
Or we could add to fund balance if you chose some of these options.
Is there still a missing step from a few years back, or is all that caught up?
Just one,
The
right?
one back.
So we put the last missing step, FY12, is in the staff recommended budget at this time.
Okay.
Awaiting.
And that
Your
dates all the
direction.
way back to 2008 to 2011, right?
So
No, we
that's,
fixed those.
yeah, we
No, we
fixed
took
those.
care of
This
those.
one's 2012. It's the last one.
Delay of 12.
Commissioners,
Yeah.
you fixed 2 of those this January.
Yep.
This was the 3rd one that was outstanding from the time frame that you're speaking of. So with the pulling that one forward, there are no outstanding longevity steps that are missed by staff that were here at the time.
Good deal.
And we took care of 10 and 11 last time,
Yep.
last fall?
In January.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Well, went into effect in January.
Gotcha.
So Beth, you're done?
Yes, sir.
You're done?
Yes.
Any
I'm
other questions?
hesitant to
Thank
go to the
you.
next slide.
It's
Oh, it won't work.
It's
Sorry.
a question slide.
That's okay. We don't need a slide
need
to
it.
ask questions. So just for my math, which you've heard before,
Yes.
and just for the public, you know, the 3 items that I know of that are enough are schools coming in here next week and asking us for $9 million. And I'm told that's all steps, COLAs, and inflation. No new positions, no new initiatives. And so it's going to be hard to tell them, not give them enough money to cover their employees, which is basically what that does. Our deputies and our correctional officers are asking for market parity, which is, I think the total is almost $3 million. So I can add 3 and 9, and that's 12. And the COLA and steps for our own employees are 4 million or 5, Beth? It's, I think it's 5.
The COLA is 3, you want me to do math in my head?
I can do
I'm
that.
just an accountant.
I can
But
do
I
that.
can't- It's 5.1 for the
So it's
FY12.
$5 million for our employees that they get their COLAs and their steps. So my math comes up to 19 million for those 3 items. And today, projected new revenue is what, Beth?
6.8.
6.8. That's even worse than I've been using 10. So just for our directors sitting in the audience and the people watching on TV, Beth said our budget looks pretty good for 23. I would disagree because of all the requests that I know that are coming. And some of those things we have to do. So
Well,
we've got to figure out how to pay for them.
I will say this, when I was on the Board of Ed, we worked with the commissioners and came up with the funding formula to get them caught up on their steps. So I think it's important that we get our own employees caught up on their steps,
Absolutely.
just like we did for them, so.
In the environment we're in today with inflation, I don't know how we can't give them a 4% COLA.
Right.
You know, to just keep them up with where we are. So,
Still a 2% slide back.
so this is just my warning to everybody out there, and what I honestly lay awake at night thinking about is how we do this. And
I think CIP requests are going to be very crucial because, I mean, and
that doesn't
unfortunately-
affect the operating budget.
Well,
No.
Mr. Harvey gave us $700 back, so he's doing his part.
Thank you very much, Mr. State's Attorney. But,
I mean, unfortunately, it's
I
the
didn't
absolute
realize-
worst
I didn't
time to
realize he was
build.
actually serious about that.
yeah, oh yeah,
I scratched it.
yeah. So we're going to have to get very creative on how we address some of these needs or wants or whatever they are. And hence our conversation with Mr. Al about his vehicle. I didn't mean to single Al out, but that was just a message to everyone out there. We've got to figure this out because, you know, irregardless of whether it's an election year or not, we all have a financial responsibility to this county. And there's no way we can entertain this year $20 million in new requests. The money's not there. So that's my warning to everyone out there that I appreciate your efforts and you have to ask. But the 5 of us have to sit in these chairs and make a decision in the very near future. And so it would behoove everyone to get creative in how they can fill their voids. Because, you know, our employees are very important to me, and I want to make sure that they're taken care of. So we got to figure this out.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments?
That was pretty gloom and doom there, buddy.
Well, I'm sorry, but it is, you know,
I understand the responsibility, so
yeah,
we're looking at it.
absolutely.
The other option is we can do something like the feds and print out 7,200 pages and then vote on it 6 hours later.
And you got to vote on it to see what you got.
Right. Just saying.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you,
do have one
Commissioners.
question, really.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Last year, what did we implement?
3%,
3%.
3% cut.
Okay.
And that generated a million something.
It was a little bit more than that, but, so what happened last year was, most of the requested funding went to the sheriff's department, and to EMS, to fill the ranks that they felt that were needed, and the Board of County Commissioners agreed with that, but it left the rest of my directors with positions that they had been seeking for a while. We were able to get many of those with a 3% cut. So they basically paid for their positions with a loss in operating expense across the board. I didn't take 3% from every single entity because I built into the 3% a fund that would allow for example, let's take the
Non-county.
library, for example. If they-
Non-county agencies.
Yeah, the non-county agencies that we didn't want to take the money from because they are actually augmenting community resource, for example, on doing a lot of the jobs that we just don't have staff to do. So that 3%, I cut that across the top. I used that to pay for those positions that they did end up getting. And this year, with the guidance of the board, that's my recommendation, if that's what has to happen. I still believe they need some of those positions. I believe they need all of them. It's whether we can afford them or not is the question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Well, now that we brightened everybody's day with reality. Next item on the agenda is public comment.
Thank you, Mr.
Superintendent?
President. We're going to open the floor to public comment. Anybody in the room that would like to make public comment, please make your way to the microphone. There's one caller on the line. Now there's two. If you wish to provide public comment, please dial *9. You will be called after the room has been given the opportunity to speak. County Commissioners have adopted rules to maintain the order and decorum in keeping with the dignity of the government process. A copy of that is found here to my right. And the Ethics Commission has asked us to advise that lobbyists include those that seek to influence local policy and are compensated for doing so or provide gifts to local officials. Speakers of public comment are strongly encouraged to review the Calvert County Ethics Ordinance and register in advance if required to do so. If you please state your name and whether you're speaking as the designated representative of a group or as an individual.
Good morning. My name is Cassandra Okumabwa, and I live at 81 Scarlet Drive, Huntingtown, Maryland. And I'm speaking for a group, Women in the NAACP. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'd like to address a few concerns that I have. I continue to be disappointed by your lack of clear denunciation of the public's behavior at the February 24th school board meeting, a meeting that 3 of you attended. I do want to acknowledge President Hance called for a more civil discourse that he stated at the March 1st BOCC meeting. Additionally, I want to thank Mr. Gadway for his more tempered behavior at the most recent school board meeting that he attended. As you noticed, the dialogue on both sides of the issues was much more respectful. I hope you all continue to adopt the same constructive tone and message. On a similar note, I am disheartened by our community's acidity towards our school board, especially regarding the superintendent selection process. Our school board is using an unbiased company to assist in the search for a new superintendent, a process used by school boards across this state and country. Through that process, the school board has arrived at 2 finalists. Members of this community have taken to the microphone and to social media to say that these candidates don't share our values, and they aren't a good fit for Calvert County. Like a majority of our school board, these finalists are both African American. Your own former deputy county administrator said it best when he affirmed the process produces qualified candidates, and that when I hear fit, first thing I think about is suspect, because it's a code word. These insensitive racial undertones are unacceptable. At your meeting last week, community members offered public comment, which contained inappropriate language embedded about our school board and the superintendent candidates. I ask that you acknowledge the school board's autonomy in performing their duties. I beseech that you fully support our new superintendent, whomever they may be. And finally, I respectfully request your work collaboratively with the school board to ensure CCPS is funded beyond maintenance of effort. We need to ensure that K through 2 classroom sizes maintain 20 or less students. We need to implement the Gifted and Talented program. We need to increase the number of emotional support professionals available to our students as we continue to combat the adverse effects brought on by the isolation of COVID. These students are Calvert County's future. Let's make sure that we set the right example for them all and all the citizens you represent in Calvert County. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room? And again, if you're on the call and would like to provide public comment, please dial *9.
Hello, my name is Luke McCauley, and I'm representing an organization, Calvert Parents for Education. I appreciate, Mike Hart, what you said earlier about concern for the long-term health of our education system. And I recognize the school board, as a previous speaker said, has an important elected duty to hire the superintendent, and as part of their purview. But we also have an elected county commissioners to handle the administration of our tax dollars and funding for the county, most of which goes to the school system. I think this is an opportunity to act as an important check and balance on power when things might be going wrong. In this case, I'm concerned that the Board of Education seems to be taking actions that may likely diminish the quality of our school system. I think we all need to be aware of this issue, what's going on, and what the Board of Education is doing, and that's why I'm here to speak today. And I'm imploring you to recognize this as county money and find out what we can do to influence this process. And I'll explain my concerns right now. The candidates had a forum, a quote-unquote forum, last week in which they had a public interaction. They had a public video. The definition of forum is that is a meeting, a place, meeting, or medium where ideas and views on a particular issue can be exchanged. During the quote-unquote forum, there was no opportunity for any exchange. This is a common tactic that we've seen in the past where the Board of Education uses language in inappropriate ways, holding symposiums when, again, there's no public interaction. A second issue, in terms of public input, the opportunity for feedback was approximately 36 hours from the end of the forum. They held the forum, and the survey closed on Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. That's not enough time for people to be able to watch 2-hour-long presentations and to be able to digest it and provide feedback. Second, the survey for this feedback was advertised to the entire Washington, D.C. metro area on Fox 5 News Channel. This reaches a metro area of 6.2 million people. Our county is 90,000 people. And it said on the news station, here's where you go to provide input for this Board of Education candidate. So there's likelihood for a lot of bias involved in who might fill out that survey, and there's no control for what that might be, especially in terms of local input. In terms of the candidates themselves, we paid $80,000 for a search firm, but I think there's a couple of metrics I think I like to share in terms of data, actual information that we have. Calvert County schools currently, in terms of school quality, according to greatschools.org, 59% of our schools are above average. In Raquel Jones in Baltimore County, 51% of schools are below average. In Andre Townsel's school district in Benton Harbor, 80% of schools are below average. So again, Calvert has 59% of schools are above average, Raquel Jones 51% below, Andre Townsell 80% below average. In terms of equity and achievement gaps, this is important, and this is part of why I think these candidates are here. We currently Calvert County outperforms the state by 4 to 21% in the average just for all races. We outperform the state for all races in terms of equity and scores on math. This is according to greatschools.org. In Baltimore County, where Raquel Jones is, they underperform by all races between 4 to 13%, underperforming in achievement gaps. In Andre Townsell's case, they underperformed by 14%. So if this is an issue of equity and improving outcomes, we do not have data suggesting that there's a track record for these candidates being able to do this. So in closing, I'd like to say, first, these candidates do not have a track record of improving performance of schools in terms of quality or in terms of equity and achievement and in closing achievement gaps. Second, the public has not had sufficient time to truly interact with candidates or even watch presentations and provide input. And finally, this survey is fundamentally biased in that it was advertised to the entire metro area when this is a county-based process. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope that we can work to try and make sure we keep our school system as a high-quality educational institution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room? Okay, caller with last four digits 7058. Please press *6 to unmute yourself, identify yourself, and whether you're speaking as the designated representative of a group or as an individual.
My name is Joshua Johnson. I am an advocate for a group, Calvert County Considered Parents. Appreciate all of your time, and I appreciate the difficulty of which you're trying to make decisions right now. It's come to my attention that the Calvert Board of Education failed their audit. Some of the line items that are in here, the CCPS on several occasions did not get approvals for purchases exceeding $25,000, which the bylaws say need to happen. Procurement policies were not consistently used. Payments to bus contractors of actual costs and so on could not be supported. This is misappropriations of funds. 6 of 8 abuses after the audit were repeated. That means 75% of the time they were again putting the county and all of us at risk. This is rather enlightening here. There was a unique employment benefits for 5 executive employees valued at $500,000. That was not to be there. It suggested with a vote of no confidence for all of this. 54% of the taxpayer dollars go to education. It clearly needs oversight underneath the commission. We can clearly not let the Board of Education make their own decisions, of which was an example today. That's the reason why I led with this. When you don't even know what it is that you're asking for, of which $0 go to the biggest concern that's been on the Board of Education for years now, and that is to support our teachers, to give them the ability to have a smaller class size that promotes education for all of our kids. And it's really funny that the NAACP has had so much to say, but so little to say for our teachers. And in regards to the individual that was on, 3 of 5 of our Board of Education members are black. She was alluding to the fact that there's racism involved here. The only racism that we have is the NAACP that continues to try to race shame people rather than find the best candidates of which these 2 are proven not. 5% of math and reading rates retention in Andres, the Canada Andres area, 240% dropout rates above the national average in the Baltimore area. Also wanted to follow up with you in regards to our petition. Made you aware that we had one, and apparently 4 the candidates was also there. Just an update, there's 1,304 petitioners that are against having these 2 individuals that have a proven track record, not only not for the values of Calvert, but I'm not sure for the values of our education systems. There's 476 for. That means 73% is against moving forward with these individuals. These are your constituents. This is real time. This is facts. This isn't feelings. This is the time that we need to make a decision at the county level where our monies are going. I would highly suggest that those monies and funds come underneath the commission, come underneath the Calvert County themselves to be able to be dispersed evenly and appropriately, correctly, where it's proven that that has not been done. I appreciate all your time. I appreciate what you stand for, and I do very much see that you're going to see the wisdom of assuring the facts that the taxpayers here are represented properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller, last four digits, 2803. Please press star 6 to unmute yourself, identify yourself, and whether speaking as an individual or the designated representative of a group.
Good morning, Calvert County Commissioners. My name is Joseph Cormier, it's C-O-R-M-I-E-R, and I'll be speaking on behalf of myself today. I'd like to say that the last two speakers who were speaking on behalf of Calvert parent groups don't represent all Calvert parents. The audit that they were referring to is something that yearly happens, and that was shown in the Board of Ed meeting, and nothing untoward was being done. I hope that as you go forward that you will find the facts and not the feelings of loud people. As we go forward, I want to support all the teachers and instructional aides and educational support professionals who support all of our children. And the Board of Education is a duly elected board that has one job: to hire a superintendent. It's not the people's job to vote it in. It's not an elected position. There's no reason the Board of Ed, who reached out to PTAs and special education groups and citizen advisory committees, they spoke to many people. It didn't happen in the dark. It wasn't a surprise. This happens every 4 years. And I don't understand where the passion is when it's not something like this happening. So I hope that you will not listen to the loudest voices in the room and don't believe everything you read on Facebook. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you. Next item is Commissioner reports. Commissioner Hart.
Thank you, Mr. President. So all I will say is, hopefully, well, how to rephrase this? I love living in a community that we care so much to speak, because it's proven when you don't, things get missed. You know, I like to do a lot of sports analogies, and they always say you're only as strong as your weakest team member. And every voice has to be heard. I think everybody wants civility. I would hope you do. If you don't, your heart's in the wrong place and it's not constructive. But going back to when I was a kid here, and I say these stories all the time, and I believe it then and I believe it now. We didn't have enough people here to hate anybody. I know there was disagreements, and some people might say you're crazy. I'm telling you. When one bus picked up Drum Point, Ranch Club, and Cove Point, we all knew each other. You might not like somebody, but not liking somebody is not hating them. There is a difference. There was always a respect level, and you knew that you may need that person to help you. I say it all the time. We lived on a road that was, it was a dirt road, and in the summertime in the rains, you could literally sink. You couldn't get out. I mean, in the wintertime, it actually froze. It was the closest thing I had to a hard road till I think I was almost 40 years old. But if we lose sight of this communication with our neighbors, you're going to lose the whole thing. The best thing about Calvert, and it's a gorgeous, beautiful place, but Calvert has been different because if you see the people that volunteer, we've never had enough money to pay for every single service. We all have family members that have volunteered for things like Smile and the fire departments and things like that. You lose sight of respecting your neighbor. You lose sight of the value of your neighbor, and we're going to be like these cities that none of us want to be there, because if we did, we would be there. These cities that you don't know your neighbor, and there's bars on the windows, and you don't talk to each other. Once you get there, it's real hard to get back. I'm glad that people are passionate about things. I love passion. I really do. Kind of hard to. I'd rather if you hate me, just tell me you hate me. I really, than just to be nice to my face, because it doesn't do anybody any good. And if you hate me, and I've had people, and not to belabor this, but I've had people go, Mike Hart, I did not like you, but I'm okay with you today. Still don't like me, but they're kind of okay with me today because at least they knew where I was coming from, and that took time, I guess, for some folks to. You come from a preconception of what you think things are, but until you take the time to really learn about it. So all I would ask, and look, you have a kid in school, you have a kid anything, you have to speak if something's bothering you. You have to know what's on everybody's mind, good, bad, or indifferent. You have to have community buy-in. Like I say, I just, I don't want us to lose sight of why we are how we are, and that is respect first. If you don't respect somebody, then you don't respect yourself. And I'm not preaching, I'm not trying to, I'm just saying, from when I was a child, how I was taught about how we helped each other here, and I just don't want to see us lose that as a community. So, that's it.
Commissioner McCollum?
Yeah, I just want to say that several of us attended the Dunkirk Firehouse Awards banquet, which was very good. The food was prepared by, what is the name?
Smart Brothers.
It's the Smart Brothers, but what's the name of it?
Sassafras Farms.
Sassafras Farms. It was very good. And then we left there and went to the history fair, and it was really nice because they named two of the awards after the late Senator Miller, who he was a big advocate for history. So that was really nice to see that. So that's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Gadway?
As Commissioner McConkey mentioned, some of us did go to the Dunkirk Volunteer Fire Department and Rescue Squad banquet. Just to sum it up and everything, it was quite a chilling event. The history fair was after that. The topics that some of these kids brought up were amazing, and things that I would think the majority of parents could go in and learn from. I wish I would have had the opportunity to go in, because some of the topics, I don't want to pick one out because there are so many good ones, but I would have loved, and I wish I would have taken time out of my day in order to go through and actually see some of these projects and read some of the stuff that they were able to research. You know, I will pick one out, and it's just because it stands out. A young lady or group, I can't remember exactly, did a project on the downfalls of battery-operated electric vehicles and all the pitfalls to it associated with the pollutions associated and everything else, and the costs, everything else, including the fact that they are charged by fossil fuels. So it was really, I wish I would have had the opportunity to go in and see those, because some of the topics were clearly not politically savvy to go against electric cars right now. I just wish I would have had that opportunity, and I will definitely make time next year. Some of us were up at the Ward Farm ribbon cutting last week. Had a great turnout, beautiful day. I was told that there are fish in the pond about that big, so I'm not going to go fishing up there yet. Not condoning fishing, because I don't know if it's legal up there yet. We'll find out if the signs are up there. I had a discussion with teachers union, both teachers unions and the support staff unions last night. There was a question asked of what do we or would we as elected officials do in reference to parents coming out and attacking teachers, coming out online and berating them, attacking them, calling them names, being disrespectful. And in my book, that's unacceptable. Teachers should be respected. If you have a qualm with them, that is why they all have supervisors. If you have a problem with the supervisor, go to that person's supervisor, or go to the school board meeting, talk to the school board, talk to the superintendent. There is no place in our county to have people attacking teachers directly. Just want to put that out there so it's a full stop on that. And to end on a positive note, at the beginning of the month, or last month, whatever, was Groundhog Day. I don't care what that little guy saw or didn't see. As far as I'm concerned, Sunday at 11:33 a.m. is the spring equinox, and spring is here. So we've got 6 days left. We're 1 day closer to spring, and I'm looking forward to not having to wear the double heavy coats anymore. Thank you.
Vice President Reeves?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. I just want to extend my sincere condolences to the Elliott family for their loss. That's all I have.
So I too attended the Dunkirk Volunteer Fire Department Ice Banquet. And as Commissioner McCall, you mentioned, it was the Smart Brothers own a farm back on Howes Road, and they hosted the event in a very nice barn that they have fixed up. And it certainly was by no means their fault, but who would have predicted on March the 12th, the wind chill would have been 10 degrees and not been conducive to the event venue that they had. The food was excellent. They prepared all that, so I want to thank them for their efforts in behalf of the Dunkirk Volunteer Fire Department. And we did have another event, went to the History Fair with my fellow commissioners. As Commissioner Gadway said, some of the topics of those students' projects was pretty amazing to me. I mean, I was not into that when I was in school. I'll just say that. And but as he said, the subject matter of some of those projects was pretty enlightening. That our children in middle school and high school are thinking about those types of historical events that happened. And like he said, if I had been there that day and gotten to see the projects, to see what their perspectives were, would have been probably pretty enlightening. So, and I was at the Ward Farm dedication. I don't believe fishing is allowed there yet, but it is a wonderful facility. I would encourage everyone to get out there, and there's trails and fields, and just the first phase has been implemented. But Senator Miller would be very proud of what he accomplished. Basically, he worked very hard to make sure that farm got purchased and got some state funding to make sure it gets developed. So I want to thank Senator Miller for all of his efforts. And I have to apologize. Yesterday, I spent the day putting up political campaign signs. And I'm sincerely sorry to all of you out there. For this year, most of you noticed the sheriff has elected not to run, and the sheriff's race has gotten quite heated. And I venture to say there have been some sheriff campaign signs up now for a year or maybe more. And as you ride around Southern Maryland, you wouldn't even know there was an election going on until you hit Calvert County, and then you think it was going to be tomorrow. And yesterday I contributed to that trash. But unfortunately, political signs are part of a campaign. And I was waiting as long as I could, and people just kept harassing me to do something. So we did put some up yesterday. So now I'm in with everybody else. And I'm so sorry. I just can't wait for the primary to be over, and 3/4 of those signs are going to come down. So let's pray that they don't push the primary. And just so for those of you that aren't aware, they did push the filing deadline till March the 22nd because the state redistricting plan was taken to court. Judge is supposed to make a decision on April the 3rd or 4th. Depending on his decision, then the legislature has 10 days to act on that judge's decision. Depending on what decision he makes, they may extend the filing deadline again. And there's a rumor that if they do that, they're going to push the primary to August or somewhere out there. So God help us. These signs are going to be up for longer than they should be. But so just be aware. You'll get some information from the election board, and just pay attention because things are ever changing. And the last comment I'll make is, we as a board have gotten a lot of comments about the superintendent's search and people's satisfaction or dissatisfaction with the superintendents, the two individuals that have surfaced to the top. For me personally, I don't care the gender, the race, where they come from, what they did last year. I just want the best school superintendent we can hire. Because our school system depends on it. And so for me, I haven't been involved in that process because we play no role. But I think everybody, whenever the decision is made, needs to get behind that individual and support them and make sure that they have the tools to make sure our children get the best education they can possibly get. So that's all I have to say about that. And with that, I don't know that we have executive session items today. We don't. So we're just going to adjourn. And yes, sir, Commissioner Gadway.
I never get to say this because he normally does a specialty. Motion to adjourn, sir.
Well, how about a motion to recess? Public hearings.
I stand corrected. Dang it.
There you go. You got him, Steve. You got
Don't
him.
mess with the master.
You'll always be the motion man, Steve. Always.
So what's your motion, Commissioner Gadway?
You can make that motion.
No, I'm good. Go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that we recess until our public hearing this evening for the Drum Point Property Owners Association request for special tax district at the Southern Community Center at 7 p.m.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second that we recess until 7 p.m. tonight at the Southern Pines Community Center. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing
Yes, sir.
none.
Yes, sir.
Oh.
I should have read the instructions. I stand corrected. Thank
Well,
you.
you should.
I do.
Any other discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Everyone, you have a great day. Too far.
That was good. That was good.
Don't mess with the master. The motion passed.